Hi, everyone. This is Josh coming to you from Old Greenwich, Connecticut. And I just want to take a few minutes to share the independent writing project that I've been working on this semester and give you guys a bit of a taste of what it includes and my kind of process with it from draft to draft and how it turned out overall for my revision. In my proposal for the project, I really wanted to be able to discuss all the different ways that I can express my idea of home. I didn't want to just keep it to one thing, like just poems. There was a time when I maybe thought, like, oh, maybe I'll just do a bunch of OED poems about home because I've always loved OED poems. But I kind of wanted to give myself a little room for expansion. So maybe I could make an OED poem here, and then in this draft, maybe make, a narrative, a memoir, and then maybe in somewhere else do a fiction short story. I wanted to be able to express the idea of home and more importantly explore the idea of home in various different ways using various types of writing. I didn't want to limit myself. If I did limit myself, I feel like I wouldn't really be able to fully answer that question of what makes a home. I wanted to be able to explore it from different perspectives and different people, and I'll get more into how I want to view it from different perspectives later on when I share about my second draft. So, on the onset, my project had a really large scope and a lot of room for interpretation. I could pretty much go anywhere I wanted with it. I didn't want to contain myself to just like prose writing or just poetry. And while that was a good thing, it meant I could explore a lot of different avenues of writing. It also meant that I had to kind of figure out what I wanted to do for not only my drafts, but for the book in general. I wanted to choose the formats that I chose, like critical thinking essays or, narratives for important reasons and not just because they were all different. So for my first draft, my main aim was to be able to write an intro for all of it. Um, so instead of just doing like, okay, my first draft is going to be my essay section, my second draft is going to be my poetry section. I want my first draft to be the intro to the book, the first thing you see when you read. And I figured that while I was writing that, I would be able to kind of figure out what I was going to put in the rest of the book. I wanted the intro to be kind of like a intro to a 5 paragraph college essay where you kind of go through all the points you're going to be making and how you're going to do it and kind of giving an intro to everything you're going to do in the book. And I thought that if I gave an intro to everything I was going to do in the book in the intro, I would have a much better idea of the type of drafts I would want to do moving forward. For my second draft, I actually started out with writing a fictional narrative. This didn't really go where I wanted to, and it didn't really help me kind of widen the scope in terms of other people's perspectives. So instead of writing my own little like short story that has something to do with home, I decided to go in a completely different direction with my second drafts and actually do interviews with people. So I got a few of my friends together and I got them to sit down and do an interview with me about what home meant to them. This also came out really nicely. The people I interviewed with were awesome and gave me so much content, so much time. And it really helped me fully understand how much home, just like the meaning of that word means to people because people gave me answers from all across the board. And I felt like not only did I get a really good idea of what home was, I really got a better idea of what like type of people my friends were in a lot of ways too. So it was a really awesome experience. Thank you to everyone who did my interviews and sat down with me because it was a really fun, really rewarding experience, and I'm really glad with. I asked them questions like, "What does home mean to you? Have you ever moved in your life?" And those were kind of like, in a lot of ways, jumping off points for these like long, intense, narratives that people gave me. One of my suite mates, Steve, actually gave me an awesome, super funny interview where I asked him what home was to him, and he said, "Oh, I think of my home and back to my family, but honestly, I think more about Stewart's, which is like this kind of like ice cream grocery store place that he really loves." And we ended up talking about that for the most part and why that's home to him. And it was really funny and it was really enjoyable and it was so different and out there, which I was super happy about. I always knew that I wanted my third draft to be poetry. That being said, I wasn't totally sure of what kind of content I'd be putting into the poetry. A lot of me thought each poem would have, a title that would relate to a home that I had at some point in my life, maybe in college, maybe when I was much younger. But then when we were all sent home from school, I started thinking about Marist a lot, obviously, and I started missing Marist a lot, obviously. So I kind of wanted to, make my third draft about something that I was thinking about all the time, which was my homes at Marist. So each poem that I wrote about Marist kind of, correlated with a certain home that I had there. So I wrote about, my housing situations, why those felt like home, why I missed them a lot. And I kind of wanted to frame the entire thing kind of around, looking at Marist as, something I love and kind of talking to Marist as if it was a person that I love. So that's how a lot of my poems are addressed and how they're written in that kind of point of view. I was really happy with how these turned out. I thought that they kind of also just helped me kind of process everything that was going on and kind of helped me capture kind of the homes that I had there that I didn't have anymore. It was really nice. It was definitely like an emotional thing to write. Poetry is always an emotional thing to write, but it was kind of just like what I was feeling at the time. I don't really feel like I could have written anything else for my third draft. So when the time came to start brainstorming what I wanted to do for my revision, I realized that I had already done the intro, I had done interviews, and I had done poetry. And in that intro, I had done a narrative. So I had already covered a lot of ground. So I kind of wanted to do something completely different with my revisions. I had this idea of kind of writing just like a personal narrative, first person memoir, and interjecting some lines of poetry into it. I liked that idea, and it was something I kind of experimented with, but after a bit of time, I kind of adjusted it. I thought maybe I would want to kind of have this central poem at the top of my piece, just a regular, line by line poem. And then after the poem, have a narrative that corresponds with the poem. Specifically, it would correspond with each line of the poem. So I'd put the poem, a line from the poem, description, line of the poem, description. This description was both kind of second person point of view and first person point of view. First person from when I was talking about my own experiences, and second person when I was just kind of trying to kind of like talk about the, abstract nature of home and what home means to people. So I wanted to have a poem that I would be able to expand upon in each line. So I used the poem, each line from the poem, and then a form of writing afterwards, whether it was first person or second person. I was really happy with how my project turned out. I think if I learned anything, it was just that it's so important to have those drafts to brainstorm, to experiment with different ideas and forms of writing, because that's what ultimately led me to my revision, which I felt like was my strongest interpretation of my original concept. Lastly, I just want to read a little bit of the end of my revision project. This one's from the poem Home Is, and the prose from it as well. And it was beautiful. Looking out the window, breathing the air, while everything has changed, you can still lie down one last time and take in the perspective of where you were, of where you hope to be again. And you realize truly what this was. Well, it was home. Even in this state of grotesque longing and desire, a type that never reached these heights, a height that no amount of lust or love could replicate, you still look towards the next love, towards the next home is this. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone's doing well, and I'm really excited to see your presentations. Take it easy.